Neo-Nazism continues to run rampant in Ukraine as the Ukrainian president honors the Azov Battalion and other Nazi brigades fighting in the Ukrainian military. Like, bro, you know we can literally see that Nazi insignia, right? They're not even trying to hide it anymore. Meanwhile, the Western media is still actively whitewashing Nazis in Ukraine. The Western media is in denial, despite the fact that Nazism in Ukraine is one of the main drivers of this conflict. You can't blame the Russian people for wanting to get rid of this Nazi scourge next to their border who is attacking and killing ethnic Russians in Ukraine. This is why the Western corporate media has been so aggressive about lying about Ukraine. They don't want the world to know that they are siding with the Nazis. Because before the Russian special military operation, the Western media was clear that there was a Nazi problem in Ukraine. The corporate media used to talk about it all the time. In fact, the United States Congress used to have a ban from weapon sales going to neo-Nazi battalions in Ukraine. The West used to acknowledge the Nazi problem in Ukraine, but then they got the proxy war against Russia that they wanted. Now they call anyone who calls out the Nazi presence in Ukraine as repeating Russian talking points. They even have Google AI that is actively lying on behalf of the empire, claiming that Nazi presence in Ukraine is just Russian propaganda. Like, bro, we literally see their Nazi tattoos and insignias. The gaslighting is insane. It should be completely disturbing to everyone that our ruling class is willing to whitewash Nazis in Ukraine and are willing to completely to rewrite our reality in order to serve their NEOCON agenda.
What's poppin'? My friends, my family, welcome back to Nick at Primetime. We have a banger for you today. We have the homie Hodge from ACP, the chairman of the ACP, who will be joining us. We'll be analyzing the results of the election last night, what it means for the working class. I'm going to say this. What did I tell you guys? I told you guys the second that Donald Trump won. It's clear as day that Donald Trump and MAGA, just like Joe Biden and the Democratic Party by funding a genocide, is here to bail out the Democratic Party. Soon as Donald Trump won, I saw people say, oh, there's going to be a MAGA dominance in politics. I'm like, man, I don't know about that, man. I know how this duopoly works. You had Donald Trump and MAGA that put America last. You have Donald Trump that openly betrayed his entire base when he ran on an anti-war platform. Now he's still funding the Nazis in Ukraine. He's floating the idea of invading Nigeria. The only thing he cared about doing as president, as far as governing on behalf of Israel and censoring Americans, you guys think there's not going to be retaliation to this? This moment right here is the exact moment that Zohran Mamdani won this election. Now, with Haas, we're going to explain what the election with Mamdani means. I think a lot of people are getting way too excited, which is the problem with the professional managerial class. Because remember, fam, the professional managerial class views victory as just winning the election and winning the election only. Fam, the battle is supposed to just begin if you're a Zohran Mamdani supporter, and already seeing these people playing and acting like his lawyer instead of holding him accountable, because Zohran is already tweeting nonsense about how we got to fight against anti-Semitism. But it was this moment right here, because the way I'm taking this, because the same way I left at Democrats when Trump won, I laughed at MAGA when Biden won in 2020. I'm always going to laugh at the loser. And we're witnessing massive meltdown from the Zionist lobby because of this. So this is a fantastic rhetorical victory against Zionism. And it is funny seeing the Zionist meltdown. I will enjoy this, but I'm going to show you guys the exact moment which represents the change of the American psyche. This moment right here won Zohran Mamdani this election.
The first foreign visit by a mayor of New York is always considered significant. Where would you go first? Left to right, Ms. Adams.
First visit, I would visit the Holy Land.
Mr. Cuomo.
Given the hostility and the anti-Semitism that has been shown in New York, I would go to Israel.
Mr. Tilson, where would you go?
Yeah, I'd make my 4th trip to Israel, followed by my 5th trip to Ukraine, 2 of our greatest allies
Come on,
fighting
man.
on the front lines of the global war on terror.
Mr. Mamdani.
I would stay in New York City. My plans are to address New Yorkers across the 5 boroughs and focus on that.
Mr. Mamdani, can I just jump in? Would you visit Israel as mayor?
I will be doing as.
This is the exact moment he won the election. Like, you could pack this shit up right at this exact moment. And the Zionists overplayed their hand because Zohran Mamdani didn't even want to talk about Israel-Palestine like that. They themselves made this a referendum. And I don't know if they was like doing a live, almost like they're using the New York election as a way to test the waters of how the American populace are feeling about Israel, Zion, because they made it about Zionism. Zohran, like, bro, I don't want to talk about that. Yeah, I condemn globalized intifada. I want to run about the cost of living for New Yorkers. And as these people made it clear, the ruling class made it clear that they didn't give a fuck about New Yorkers. They care about, and they only care about, governing for their favorite apartheid genocidal regime. And they're just a small part of the cope. This is why we're seeing the Democratic Party revival, because Donald Trump and MAGA is doing their part. The same way that Biden did his part to revive Donald Trump by committing a genocide, by continuing to fail the American working class by breaking rail strikes. That's what we see in the Trump administration. This is the he's the ambassador to Israel, isn't he? 30% of Jewish Americans voted for Mamdani. So you guys lost the information war. Here's Jonathan Greenblatt from the ADL. You already know the ADL is having a meltdown. Let's listen to this.
And I will tell you, I've gotten so many calls from Jewish New Yorkers who are alarmed. Their kid was harassed in college. Their child was bullied in K through 12. Their synagogues vandalized. So here's what ADL is doing right now. If you are a Jewish New Yorker, we have your back, and we will hold Mamdani, Mayor-elect Mamdani, accountable. And I will.
Come on, man. So I can enjoy these moments. These moments are hilarious. I want to take advantage of any political event that captivates the masses in order to spread my message of anti-Zionism, raising awareness about how we occupied by these Jewish supremacist scum. And unfortunately, I see the pressure working. I've seen the pressure working already on Mamdani. And I have made an argument, and we've seen it. The argument made by many of my Palestinian friends who've been critical of Zohran, that he actually legitimized many of the Zionist talking points against the Palestinian movement by condemning the Palestinian resistance, by condemning globalized intifada. He's not shifting the Overton window to the left. He's legitimizing talking points that Zionists should have been conceding to us. So as people are uncritically cheerleading for Zohran Mamdani, you had the Zionist class who they was going to work. And they have successfully shifted Zohran on his positions on the NYPD. He apologized for calling the NYPD racist. And now he has this insane Zionist who pledged to crack down on anti-Semitism and is that he's going to keep at the NYPD. And I can't wait to ask. I'm going to ask Haas about this, but every time I hear Zohran describe his democratic socialism, it always makes me want to vomit. Like, I don't want socialism to be blamed for when Zohran Mamdani inevitably fails to decrease the cost of living for New York. Because Zohran Mamdani hella overpromised. And this is what we've seen time and time again. These people are allowed to call themselves socialists. They're here to drag what it means to shift. They shift what it means to be a socialist to the right. That is what we see from AOC. These people are advocating for a welfare state. Now, if you don't think this is a criticism, that's okay. It's not everything I say about Zohran Mamdani is not meant to be a scathing criticism. So if you like welfare capitalism, then I guess Zohran Mamdani is your guy. But I'm way beyond welfare capitalism. I want to completely destroy the political power of the capitalist class. I want a dictatorship of the proletariat. This is not that what Zohran is doing. Zohran conceding to landlords, him making alliances with the business capitalist class. This is not engaging in class struggle. He already promised landlords that, hey man, I'm not going to do anything that harm your profits and harm your power. That's what he said. So if you want welfare capitalism, Zohran is your guy. But Zohran is not a socialist. And there are a lot of DSA people get upset when you say this, but we have to gatekeep what it means to be a socialist because there's an active campaign to shift what it means to be a socialist into supporting Banderite Nazis, to condemning the resistance. If you're a true advocate of the working class, a true socialist, a true communist, it's upon us to gatekeep and be 100% clear about what our intentions are. And every single time I'm hearing Mamdani ask this question about socialism and communism, he runs away from communism as fast as possible. This is the anti-communism that you see among the progressive managerial class. Instead of using this opportunity to explain why we should be challenging the power of the capitalist class, the DSA elected, what they do is they immediately cave to the framing. They promote this false idea of democratic socialism as if socialism isn't inherently democratic. But I'll let the video play because we just have to correct the record on this. And even if you like Zohran Mamdani, you should be calling this nonsense out. Why are people acting like lawyers on behalf of these politicians? So we have Haas who will be joining us soon. I want to get thoughts on this because this is every time I hear this man talk about socialism, it makes me want to vomit. So let's play this clip and I'll bring our guests in to respond.
Joins us now.
And the communist joins us now. How do you respond to that when somebody comes up to you and says, I can't vote for you because you're a communist?
I say there are reasons you might not want to vote for me, but let's be honest about my politics. I'm a democratic socialist no matter how many times President Trump calls me otherwise.
Yeah, explain the difference. What is the difference between a Democrat, a democratic socialist, and a communist?
Well, I'm a democratic socialist who's also a Democrat.
Right.
And when I say I'm a Democrat,
I'm a democratic socialist who is also a Democrat. Emphasis and underline the word Democrat there. Because Zohran Mamdani, he said very clearly that he wants to save the Democratic Party. He wants to remind the Democratic Party of their working class roots. It's all a PR campaign to save a capitalist party. But I'll let him finish his answer here.
Democratic socialist and a communist.
well, I'm a democratic socialist who's also a Democrat.
Right.
And when I say I'm a democratic socialist, I explain it in the words of Dr. King from decades ago, who said that call it democracy or call it democratic socialism, there must be a better distribution of wealth for all of God's children in this country.
Right.
And what I actually find is that when you're speaking to New York,
This is just a small point, but I said this 1,000 times. I hate when people quote radical black leaders to explain their liberalism. Don't quote MLK to explain your irrelevant, contradictory ideology. I hate when they fucking do that because MLK called out militarism, was critical of capitalism. So they always use this quote, which as a standalone quote is not a bad quote. But that quote is not a good quote if you use that to justify why you're not engaging in class war. Socialism is not when you're able to vote for a welfare state. That's essentially what he's advocating for. Anyway, let me continue. Let's continue this clip. I want to get Haas' thoughts on this.
Socialism, there must be a better distribution of wealth for all of God's children in this country.
Right.
And what I actually find is that when you're speaking to New Yorkers, they ask you less how you describe your politics and more whether there's room for them in that politics.
Right.
And New Yorkers are asking me, does your politics have room for my struggle to afford my rent, my childcare, my groceries? And frankly, President Trump ran an entire campaign focusing on the cost of living, focusing on the promise of cheaper groceries. And his inability to do so is now making him increasingly desperate to try and stop the campaign that will actually deliver on the same diagnosis that he shared.
Yeah.
So I want to get Haas in. I want to get your thoughts on this. We have the chairman of the ACP who will join us on RBN once again. Thank you for joining us on RBN, Haas. I did. It's good to have you on again, brother.
How you doing, Nick? A long time no see.
Absolutely, man. You was in China, man. You was killing it. You was killing it. How did that even come about? Because before we get, I want to get your reaction to the clip in Zohran, but the ACP is meeting with the Chinese Communist Party. You guys meet with resistance fighters and Hamas. It's great to see. So welcome to RBN. How did that trip even come about?
Well, it was hosted by the Renmin University in China. They were holding a strategic dialogue. I think they do it yearly. And Professor Wang Wen, who connected us, he was very interested in our perspective because he wanted a voice for a newer generation, and he saw the American Communist Party, go so viral and become so prominent online, and he was thinking, this is very interesting. We have Americans who are inspired by us. They have taken inspiration from China, So, he was interested in our perspective in that capacity, I guess.
Yeah, that's dope. As we have social democrats who condemn Maduro, like Zohran Mamdani. He condemned Venezuela and Cuba as authoritarian states. We have the ACP who's willing to meet with the enemy of the empire. And you got to give props to that. So it was cool to see this. It was cool to see this. But I want to get your thoughts on this clip and your thoughts on these democratic socialists in general and the way they tend to define their socialism. I remember Zohran was speaking with Hassan Piker. We covered this a long time ago. I defined socialism as our access to the ballot box. And I'm like, what the fuck are you talking about? So this is the clip where Zohran, I'll play it again. I want to get your response. And I also want to get your response and the response of ACP, how the working class should be responding to Zohran. So let me play this clip. I want to give you the response.
No matter how many times President Trump calls me otherwise.
Yeah, explain the difference. What is the difference between a Democrat, a democratic socialist, and a communist?
Well, I'm a democratic socialist who's also a Democrat.
Right.
And when I say I'm a democratic socialist, I explain it in the words of Dr. King from decades ago, who said that call it democracy or call it democratic socialism, there must be a better distribution of wealth for all of God's children in this country.
Right.
And what I actually find is that when you're speaking to New Yorkers, they ask you less how you describe your politics and more whether there's room for them in that politics. Right. And New Yorkers are asking me, does your politics have room for my struggle to afford my rent, my childcare, my groceries? And frankly, President Trump ran an entire campaign focusing on the cost of living, focusing on the promise of cheaper groceries. And his inability to do so is now making him increasingly desperate to try and stop the campaign that will actually deliver on the same diagnosis that he shared.
Man, polished as hell, but I can't stand his answers on socialism. What's your thoughts?
First of all, I can't stand this guy. I'm just going to be honest. Like, I can't stand hearing him. I can't stand his face. I can't stand his voice. I can't stand his stupid ass smile. I hate looking at this guy. So I get triggered automatically whenever I see him. But regarding his answer, I mean, look, this is what you call, somebody who's apologizing before they even had anything to apologize for. Why are you a socialist? Well, he's quoting Dr. King. As if that's gonna what? I mean, what is that gonna do as far as getting you out of the deep end or the hole you're in? You think so? I mean, he says, well, what does that mean that you're a democratic socialist? Well, I just think there should be a better distribution of wealth, is basically what he's saying. And he's misquoting Dr. King to basically confirm what Fox News says socialism is, which is just redistribution of wealth. When in fact, socialism is about ownership. It's about changing the ownership. It's about changing the sovereignty. And the only way you can do that is if you address the question of imperialism. Because the way that capital is owned and constructed and structured in the USA is as imperialist capital. It's intertwined with the global imperialist system. And so he wants to take revenues from that system and basically kind of just promise free shit to more people from it. And that's his whole selling point. The only way you can be a socialist in America is if you're an anti-imperialist. Because if you're saying we need to seize our means of production, we need to have ownership of our production, we need to have sovereignty over production, then what that means is we have to make it accountable to us and us only. We can't make it reliant upon financial revenues that come from exploiting the rest of the world. We have to have and own our own shit.
Yeah. Very well said. The social democrats, they just want to divide the spoils of imperialism. Mm-hmm. They're upset that they're not getting cut of the pie that we're stealing from Africa and the global south, that they don't benefit from our extraction from oil. And when you see these social democrats in the DSA, it's clear to me that their agenda right now, and history will be told whether they will be successful or not, but they are desperate to prevent a rise of an ACP, of an RBN, of any anti-imperialist, anti-capitalist movement outside of the Democratic Party. I said this when Zohran Mamdani won the primary. While people were surprised, Haas, I told you guys I'm not surprised at all because Mamdani is a God's gift. And guys, he's an amazing politician. I don't think anyone can deny. Like in terms of what they were looking for, he's very polished, very well spoken. In a time where people are fleeing the Democratic Party because the Democratic Party committed a genocide in Gaza, after the progressive took L after L, Bernie lost multiple times. You had Cori Bush who lost her seat, Jamal Bowman who lost his seat. It started becoming 100% illogical for anyone to advocate running as a Democrat. So what did the establishment need? You have to give the progressives a bone. You have to give them something to chase so they can give up a mayorship in New York to some guy they can easily control, because they can't give the illusion that you can't win at all within the Democratic Party. So Zohran Mamdani was actually a godsend to them. So these are the people who the success of Zohran is extremely critical to their brand. And I could show you guys 1,000 tweets like these. I could have grabbed more, but I'll show you just a few examples I've seen that shows that these people are, the number one concern is to stop a third party. Look, Democratic leaders are begging to lose their base to a third party. This is in response to Hakeem Jeffries saying he doesn't view Zohran Mamdani as the future of the Democratic Party. So you see how Nina Turner and these people are 100% tied to the change of the Democratic Party. Here, Emma, I'll get your thoughts on this, Oz. Our democracy survival? Imagine how much of a privileged brat you have to be talking about the survival of American capitalist democracy. But here's her tweet, and I'll get your thoughts, Oz. Our democracy survival hinges on and Democratic Party leadership.
if I may,
go ahead.
You know what it is? We, the American people, we're supposed to have a contract, right, with the government. Supposedly, that's what they say. It's like the Constitution is our contract. So we have this contract, and so that's what we have, apparently. That's what we were sold on. And it's like, the reality is we have a regime that is extending beyond the enumerated powers given to it within its contract. And one of the ways it does that is this two-party system. It's an unspoken rule. It's almost like it's law that there's only two parties, and that's it, Democrat and Republican. And why is everyone who's trying to build anything outside of that villainized, have their character assassinated, hunted down, persecuted, whatever you call it? Because we're all supposed to accept implicitly the truth. The truth of the matter is that the only parties that can have any chance are the ones approved by the regime. So what our question should be is, what is this regime? Where is that in our constitution? Where do we sign up for that? Well, when did we get this fucking regime that decides what politics has to be? And when did we vote for that? When did we sign up for that? I mean, it's like an Emma Vigeland, who's an airheaded bitch. I'll just say that. I don't have a fucking problem saying that. If I were to ask her, Emma, why Democrats, though? She'd be like, well, I'm just being realistic. That's what they always say. Well, I'm going to be realistic. Yeah. Okay, so your realism is based on an implicit acknowledgement that the only way to do politics is in America is the way that it's regime approved. And you know what? That would be fine, in a way, if that was written somewhere. But that's not even formally supposed to be the case. Like, where is that in law? How can we participate in politics if there's no way to fucking make it accountable to us?
Exactly.
Why are we implicit? Why do we agree to this like cynicism? Emma Vigland, all these like Democrat retards who sorry, we're on YouTube. I'm gonna try to calm my tone.
No,
but like all these people who try to set the terms of politics, you know, what gives them the right to do? Where does that come from? You know, I'm not saying I'm some, you know, extremist who's like living in the clouds. We have a country, we have a constitution, we have laws. So why this cynicism and this so-called realism that says, oh, that's not realistic to be outside the Democrats? Well, why not? Like, says who? Well, because voters won't change. No, this isn't an issue of voters. This is an issue of political operatives lacking a spine, having no backbone. Because if Emma Vigland or any of those other people that you showcased decided to step out and say, okay, you know what, we're going to commit to a new party, guess what would happen to them? The media would write hit pieces on them. They would get villainized on social media. Yep. All their connections with NGOs would be severed. No more friendship with Alex Soros. No more donors. No more connections in high places. You become de facto what you and me are, a dissident.
Yep.
Now, Nick, why are we dissidents? Have we broken any laws? Have we done anything that is in violation of the U.S. Constitution or even the law itself? No, we haven't. But we're treated by the system as dissidents anyway. You, me, and everyone else who's outside of it. And this is the unspoken truth they all recognize. Zohran recognizes it. And they smile. They look in the camera and they smile at us without addressing that elephant in the room, which is, where did we, the American people, sign up for this unaccountable regime that looms over us like this scary, spooky ghost, but nowhere is enumerated in any law, in any code, in any constitution, in any social contract, in any agreement? We are living under a dictatorship. It's that simple.
Don't you know we had to work within the two-party system, though, Haas, because the capitalist class told us we have no choice?
Yeah, we have no choice. And they rule us openly. You know, in the past, it would be a veneer of democracy. But in reality, it was the rule of the bourgeoisie. Now there's no more veneer. These political prostitutes, and that's what I'm going to call them, these political prostitutes look in the camera and they smile at people like you and me and everyone watching this. They look at us and they say, you know what? This is the reality. The Alex Soros, the billionaires, the capitalist class, they rule you, and there's nothing you can do about it. But you know what? You may as well vote for Zohran. You may as well support AOC and Bernie, because maybe you'll get some free healthcare. I don't just want free healthcare.
Absolutely.
I want dignity as a U.S. citizen.
Very well
I don't
said.
want to be a slave. I don't want to be a serf. I don't want to be ruled by this shadowy, unaccountable, pedophile billionaire class that we have. How can we hold them accountable within the two-party system that they control? We can't. There's no voice for the people. I'm a communist, you know that, right? But I'm reaching out to everyone. We, the people, have no voice. Whether you're a communist, you're not a communist, it doesn't matter. You're either part of their big, sleazy, disgusting club, or you're a dissident. Hey, why don't we start asserting our rights that we have on paper, at least, right? Because if those rights we have on paper formally no longer apply, I think we have a problem. Okay?
Well said.
I think that if they're going to come out and admit we're just living in a dictatorship, do it. I mean, let's see if the population will accept that. But we need that confrontation.
You guys realize that's real revolutionary optimism, what Haas said. It's weird how they twisted. They say that we are the nihilists because we demand more for the working class. We are the one who aspire to have the power to bring the capitalist class to their knees. And we want to get to work in order to accomplish that within our lifetime. Isn't that correct, Haas? So Absolutely. Why are we called the nihilists? We are the revolutionary optimists because we look at this capitalist structure, and the number one thing we want to do is tear that down. The real political nihilists are these scumbags. So I'm so glad, Haas, you teed this up perfectly for me, because they're gonna explain why the working class in this country has no choice but to organize with genocidal fascists, but to organize within the capitalist party because the working class is weak, Haas. We have no choice. But
they're nobodies. They're not Alex Soros. They're not billionaires. They're a bunch of nobodies and small people. That's what they say. And they smugly admit that. That's their arrogance.
And this is why you see the New York Times and corporate media write glowing articles, positive articles for Hassan Piker. This is why the guy on the right has an MSNBC contract. The lady on the left, Emma Vigeland, she's invited on MSNBC. I see her all the time when I do my Oppo research because they love nothing more than platforming dumb leftists. So this is why they get the contract. You don't get the contract if you have the politics like me and Haas. That is not where the grip is at.
Bro, they have not even mentioned or covered ACP one time in mainstream news. Not even one time.
I noticed.
You know,
we were smeared at RB as media as the most insane far left network in America. That's like the only mention they will give us. Like, oh, look at these fucking crazy conspiracy theorists.
Did you see how the Daily Show was giving attention to Joe Sims, the old head of the CPUSA?
I didn't see that, but I saw that you guys were dragging. I gotta check that out. But
it's crazy. They're more irrelevant than we are. They have less people than we do objectively, and look at the coverage they get versus us. I mean, yeah, they just shut us out straight up.
Yeah, without shame. Let's play this clip because man, we're gonna have a lot to say here. Here's Hassan Piker and Sam Sear doing their job for the establishment, spreading political nihilism.
I know a lot of people. Some people fancy me to be far too radical, and others say that I'm a sheepdog for the Democratic Party. But like, the reality of the matter is, I obviously have a larger ambition to restructure American society in a way that benefits all workers, right? And I think that the road to achieve that does move from within the Democratic Party, at least.
Some people, Haas, call me a Democratic sheepdog. And then in the next sentence, he explains why we call him that. You guys see how in their worldview, the working class is weak. We have no choice but to go through the Democratic Party. How is this not political nihilism? So using this strategy, which has been the dominant left strategy, at least my entire lifetime, and I'm actually being very lenient with that. At least my entire lifetime, the dominant left strategy has been what, Haas? To infiltrate the Democratic Party and shift it to the left. Hey, fam, what has the working class achieved using this strategy? The only thing that you guys have accomplished is pushing the Democratic Party into supporting a genocide that you failed to stop. You didn't even stop the genocide. Democrats lost. Like, the Democrats had to lose an election. You guys didn't even stop the genocide in Gaza. And this is what I mentioned in my speech that no one covered, none of these people covered because I was dropping truth bombs on them. Did you guys get Medicare for all, Haas? Do we have health care? We got a union. We got a president busting unions. That's what we got. Do we have an increased minimum wage?
I'll tell you realism. To me, realism is this. Let's drop the pretenses. I'm talking to these people. Let's drop the pretenses. And let's acknowledge the simple fact. There is no way we're going to improve the life of working people through the system. There's no way. All we can do is fight through the system. We can fight. We can start our own party. We can engage in politics. We can fight. But the only way we're going to deliver change, observable change for the working masses of this country, is by threatening the integrity of the entire system, by overhauling and changing the entire system. And at the minimum, at least if there was a threat of that happening, they would do the reforms that these social democrats are fighting for. Social democratic reform was never won at the ballot box. It was won at gunpoint by Soviet tanks and Soviet airplanes and Soviet nuclear weapons pointed at Western countries, and all the working people of the world being like, why should we be slaves of this horrific capitalist system when the Soviets have an alternative? So the capitalists said, okay, we can't let the Soviets win over our working people. So what we're going to do is we're going to give them these concessions and we're going to give them these reforms so they don't overthrow us. That's the origin of social democracy in practice. So my question to all the social democrats who are trying to reform the system, where's your leverage? You used to have the Soviet Union to point to and say, if we don't win, they're going to win. What do you have now?
That's a great
what leverage does Zohran have? Think about it. Zohran's now elected, right? What incentive does he have to even carry out a radical program of reform versus the incentive to sell out? It's the AOC dilemma. It's the Obama dilemma. It's the same one. Okay, you got elected. You're in power. Let's weigh the incentives. You have strong incentives to just turn your back on everything you promised and just sell out and get with the program. Or you can fight. But if you fight, it's like you're taking risks and it's a long shot. And if you had the balls to do that in the first place, you wouldn't have been a Democrat. You would have been like Nick and Haas. You would have been outside the system. So you already don't have balls. So for the same reason that you decided to be realistic and run as a Democrat, you're going to be realistic and just sell out immediately. Just like Obama, just like AOC, just like Bernie.
Yep.
And it's simple math to me from where I'm standing.
And Zohran, a young guy. You guys think he's going to risk his future as a congressperson, as a senator, bucking the system too much? That's why he's already conceding on things. That's why he already planned to fund the NYPD more. That's why he kept a Zionist in charge of the NYPD, because he plans on running for Congress eventually. It doesn't start with Mayor. He's a young guy. He has a long career, and you guys have no mechanisms of accountability. But before we continue to destroy these talking points, if you're on the RBN YouTube channel, make sure you switch over to Rumble. We also on Kick too. I know you stream there sometimes. Also on Kick. I'm on other platforms, and you also can follow me on my personal channel. But I'm in the RBN stream here. But we're still live on